So I just watched your video, Corey, about the knower and the known, and how they are both inextricably tied, knotted together. Um, and it's not as though we don't or can't make distinctions between these two when we speak in our language, but to understand language before it has separated us from what we know, um, in order to actually embed uh, the act of speaking itself in the world as an event which occurs in the world, you've got to recognize that in knowing, in asking questions of the world, you are also bringing forth answers. And so it's as you said in some of your other videos, Corey, language is what makes objects. It's what gives the event of the universe meaning, because it differentiates between things and then allows us to compare those differences through simile, and metaphor. Um, you talked about Nietzsche saying that language is a lie, in the sense that it's always metaphorical. It's equating or identifying one thing with another, when we really know everything is actually quite distinct, quite different. The world never repeats itself. Um, Nietzsche's idea of eternal recurrence kind of questions that. But when I say that the world never repeats itself, what I mean is that nothing is identical to anything else. However, to even begin doing philosophy, we've all got to agree that A equals A. We've got to acknowledge the law of identity in order to say anything. And the problem is that in the world, nothing is identical to itself, or at least in the world prior to our trying or attempting to speak it, to describe it, especially to explain it. Because of course, if the knower and the known are inextricably linked in this mysterious way, then an explanation can't be what we may have once supposed it were. An explanation, the act of explaining, is just that. It's an act. It's an activity. It's a way of being in the world. It's a way of bringing forth a certain world. We're always explaining our existence. That's what language does. It takes reality, which is dynamic, multidimensional, and it lays it out in a straight line, in a series of words. And we talk about words as if those are the units of meaning. But really, the unit of meaning is the sentence, because you don't know what a word means without its context, especially without the completed temporal pouring out, which is a sentence. A word is a vessel of a kind, of a sort, but a sentence is a vessel with more life than a mere word. A sentence points you not just to a thing, but to something that a thing is doing. It situates, it provides a larger context, at the same time that it restricts our vision. Once we've started to name everything in our reality, and we start to bring forth our world through our speech, it becomes a rather confusing place, and we realize, when we really start to question ourselves, get down to the essences of our definitions, we have no idea what we're talking about. We don't know what any word means, because in order to define a word, you've got to use other words, which ultimately get their definition from other words. So when you start to ask questions like, do the gods love piety or holiness or virtue because these things are good? Or are these things good, virtue, piety, holiness, because the gods love them? It's a difficult question. Are the many one, or is the one many? You can't really decide once and for all on these sorts of questions, because they're unanswerable. And the thing is, though, when you start to recognize the relationship between the one and the many, or between the knower and the known, um, you can easily slip into what Alan Watts might call sort of this blah, spread out nebulous pantheism where there's no way to distinguish between anything. It'd be the gooey way of existing and completely neglecting the prickly way. That's that's a mistake, I think. But I don't think recognizing the fundamental non-duality of the knowing subject and the known object requires this just sort of pervasive mystery that just surrounds your existence, and you have no idea what your address or phone number are anymore. You can still, and I think we still have to recognize the importance of particularity. Yeah, the world is one, but in each of the many is a new expression of the one as you've never seen it before. And so, whatever enlightenment might be, it's got nothing to do with a knowledge you've got about an idea of oneness that's somehow already completed. Enlightenment would be being able to pay attention to the one's presence no matter what sort of particular situation it arose within. And that's something that, I don't do on my own, but that we always do together. I meet a situation only because it was provided to me by you. And so the knower, I guess you could say, is one. The known is many. And so there's a sort of transcendental intersubjectivity to our experience. And what that means is that a necessary condition for any human being is this experience of being with one another. Being, literally open to the experience of others, in the sense that everyone matters to you before you just somehow rationally decide to care about them. Your concern for the world comes prior to your decision to care about it. You don't have a choice, basically, because you are literally of this world full of an entire community of beings. You are you are one of the many. And so, you've got to meet each moment of your life as though it were completely new, never seen before, but still fundamentally an expression of the one. So every moment is the many become one, and thereby being increased by one, which was Alfred North Whitehead's definition of concrescence. The many become one and are increased by one. That's what's happening over and over. The question is it going somewhere? I think history is going somewhere. Fundamentally it's a story. It began, and it will end. Time, on the other hand, history maybe, while we are still historical beings, we falsely conceive of time as though it had a beginning a beginning and an ending, when really time is eternity. It doesn't necessarily just go round and round, but it also is always beginning. Time is the presence of origin, which isn't the past necessarily, or the beginning. It's a beginningless ending. That's what origin is, or an endless beginning, better said. So the knower and the known, maybe even using these two categories is kind of too abstract. Maybe what there is knowing, relating, interpretation, as Josiah Royce is saying. So yeah, I think that's what I think. What do you guys think? Thanks for your video, Corey. Take it easy.